Welcome to Equip Daily Bible Study. We are in Jesus' teaching on the hill from Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And in the second half of chapter 5, Jesus is talking about commands. He keeps saying to them, you have heard this, but I tell you this. And he lays out this command that's way harder than they thought they were supposed to follow. Now, why is Jesus doing that? You should actually go back to episode 16 for more detail on that, because we don't have time to cover it today. Last time we saw Jesus start to talk about enemies. He says if you have an enemy, if someone hurts you, do not take revenge. Now today we'll see that the command not to take revenge actually doesn't go far enough. We are supposed to love our enemies. Go ahead and get your paper Bible and read Matthew 5 verses 41 to 48, or if you don't have a paper Bible, I've got a link to it in the description. Jesus says, you have heard the law, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. The love your neighbor part was from earlier in the Bible. The hate your enemy part was completely made up by people in Jesus' day. God all along told them to love people, and most of your enemies are people. Sorry. This is a really extreme command. Just look at the example of the soldier. He says if a soldier forces you to walk a mile, what is that about? Well, the Roman Empire had taken over Israel, and so they were in charge. And a Roman soldier could walk up to you and say, hey, you're an Israelite, carry my stuff for me. And the law was you had to, but only for 1 mile. Now imagine how crazy it would be. The soldier says, carry my stuff. Okay, where are we going? Then you get to the end and you're like, whew, hey, anywhere else you want to go? I got a little extra time. This blows people's minds. How are we supposed to love our enemies? You might be thinking, I got no enemies, no problem. Well, you might not have enemies now, or you might. At some point in your life you probably will, so you should remember this stuff. But one thing you definitely do have right now are little tiny enemies, just people who bother you. How can you show love to people who bother you? Well, Jesus gives 2 ways right here in this passage. The one is from the soldier example, that if there's something you should do for somebody, go ahead and do extra. Like if your parents are super unfair about the way they ask you to do a chore, still do it, and then do more. Do your room, and then do your siblings' room. That's a great option if you want to obey what Jesus is saying here. Another thing you can do is if someone's really making you mad, you should pray for them. This is great because, I don't know about you, but when I'm mad at someone, it just turns over and over and over again in my mind, and praying for them kind of stops it, which is nice. Why should we love our enemies? First of all, for the same reasons we should follow any of Jesus' commands, and that is for joy, for Jesus' sake, to show him gratitude for saving us, for others' sake, to serve them, and for yourself, to make your life work. But there are more reasons we should do this particular command, and Jesus says in verse 45 that we should love our enemies so we can be like God, who no matter how evil people are, he keeps sending them sunshine and rain to grow their crops. God is so kind and loving to us, and it'd be cool to be able to say we're being like God. The other extra reason we should love our enemies is to be different. This is what Jesus is saying in verses 46 and 47. He says, anybody is able to love those who love them. The most evil people in the world do that. Think about even like gangs of people who kill others and stuff. Well, in the gang, they're still a gang, right? They take care of each other. He's saying anybody can love those who are good to them, but I want you who follow me, to love your enemies. Loving your enemies is the most Christian thing that anyone can do. This is what should make Christians special. And that's because it is what makes Christianity special. Christianity is based off of Jesus loving his enemies. That is, us. This is what it says in Romans chapter 5, verses 6 through 8. I love these verses. When we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time and died for us sinners. Now, most people would not be willing to die for a righteous person, though some might perhaps be willing to die for a person who is especially good. But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. We were God's enemies when Jesus died for us. We had turned against God. We had said no to God in so many ways, and Jesus still died in order to offer us forgiveness. Think about this. Jesus died for the people who killed him, even for the guys who were driving the nails through his wrists. He died for them. There is nothing like this message. That's how we should be too. And if that seems unrealistic to you, that's a good sign that you are not completely insane. Of course this is unrealistic to us on our own. This is one where we really, really need God's help, and we should remember that one of Jesus' big purposes for laying out these commands is to show us that we are supposed to be perfect, when these commands show us that we are not. And we need the forgiveness that Jesus offers to us. That brings us to the end of chapter 5. We will start chapter 6 next time. And until then, be strong in grace.